My first deployment and being away from home during that time frame was a hard and special time.
My unit was called You Suckers Miss Christmas.
One thing I was thankful for, my husband would get that Skype to work. We would say everything we wanted to say before it was gone. It kept the connection between he and I and him and my family.
All across the world this season, find a way to make a service member's holiday the best it can be.
Welcome to the holiday edition of Veterans in Transition. Each week we travel around the region highlighting veteran-related news, issues, and events. This is the most joyous time of the year. In this Home for the Holiday special, we highlight veterans and service members who share their story of being deployed but also missing family during this time of the year. All with the understanding that freedom is not free. In this segment, correspondent Lisa Taylor sat down with women veterans and advocates to discuss issues ranging from women in combat, health care, and being deployed during the holidays.
So now that we've gotten a little bit of background on each of your connection to the military, I know that everyone here represents an organization that is directly impacting either the community or veterans or the veteran community. So just want you to take a few minutes to just tell me what organization you're working with or leading or have founded and what you're doing in the community.
And I'm the CEO of April Showers. We provide mobile bathroom and shower capability to our homeless, to include our homeless veterans, all across the DMV. We have a 2-stall shower trailer, and we take that out to that population, to our homeless population, and provide them with that, with access to the showers and the bathrooms. We provide them with all of the necessary materials to take a shower, to include the soap, shampoos, lotions, and a towel to dry off. And if I have donated clothing, I provide them with clean clothing as well. The most sought after items by the homeless are underwear, socks, and t-shirts. So I always have those items on hand to provide them as we go out and provide for that population. They're so often overlooked. They can be on the corner, and many people think that all they want is money. I've found that not to be true. What they would like to have is just a little bit of your time. Notice them. Say hello. They will speak back. You know, even those who some have mental health or behavioral health issues, they still like to be noticed, and hey, just say hello to them, and they will speak back. And I found that to be very important as I've gone around in the community to service that population. And I always address them as king or queen, because that's how I want to be addressed. You know, so why not? Why not show them that, hey, you are more than your situation? And I found that to be very important as I've gone around and provided the service to them. And it is, I started this organization from the idea set in my head by my grandmother when I was 9 years old. I watched my grandmother make an impact on her community by giving out sandwiches to people walking down the street, by sharing her groceries with the lady down the street. You know, whatever she could do to help her neighbor, she did, and it stuck with me. And that's what started me on the road to providing shower and bathroom capability to the homeless.
Thank you for that. That's very noble work.
Yeah,
and
thank you.
Just restoring dignity to
Yes.
people who deserve it.
Exactly.
Something as simple as a shower.
A shower.
And clean clothes.
Yes.
That's amazing. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, so I represent the East Coast chapter of Tuskegee Airmen Incorporated. We are one of the largest and oldest chapters of the Tuskegee Airmen organization. Many of the Tuskegee Airmen, unfortunately, have passed away. So our organizations that are in existence, we are there to preserve that legacy and to be able to educate the other people community-wide, be able to make sure everybody has an idea and understand what Tuskegee Airmen did for history, not just the military, but for African Americans, for aviation, aerospace, anything along those lines. They basically have paved the way for a lot of things that have happened over the years that we would not have today if it wasn't for that. We also want to make sure that we are empowering the youth of tomorrow, because if we aren't providing the resources and tools that they need for them to be able to sustain and grow, we won't have a future. We won't have that opportunity for them to create a legacy for them to carry on if we don't create something for them to be able to move forward on. So that's largely what we do as an organization. My role, I have been involved with the organization since 2010. I've served on the board of directors in several different positions, and I'm currently with the education committee, and we are very, very much so involved with making sure we have the opportunity for our youth as they graduate high school and go on to pursue college, that we provide scholarships for them and making sure they have those opportunities available. We also have a very large youth and aviation program in which we are training kids, high school age kids, to be able to get their pilot's license. And so, yes, it's really amazing. I've actually been in an aircraft with someone who was 16 who was flying. I was like, oh my gosh. But it happens. They learn quite a bit. They're able to sit for their pilot's licenses and be able to become aviators if they so desire. Sometimes they decide to go into air traffic control or even aircraft mechanics. They have that opportunity as well. But we certainly create that opportunity for them and provide that groundwork for them to be able to grow from and move forward.
Thank you so much.
I'm representing the Buffalo Soldiers Association of West Point. And what we do is we preserve the legacy of the Buffalo Soldiers. We educate the community about Buffalo Soldiers. We outreach as well. Right now, the Buffalo Soldiers, of course, as it implies, is the headquarters is located in West Point. But we are expanding nationwide. We have a presence in Houston, Texas, where we are doing events there. We have an arm called Operation Impact, and we work with veteran families and youth. We establish programs such as STEM, and we do other outreach type programs. For example, in Harford County back in May 2023, we had a program about Black women veterans trauma and PTSD. And we invited the community, to come to that. We've also done blood drives for sickle cell. We've done toiletry drives and clothing drives and hugs for veterans at Perry Point. So what is hugs? Hugs are hats, underwear, gloves, scarves, and socks. And so we collect those hugs and present them to the veterans at Perry Point. In August, we did a backpack giveaway for the community, of which contains quite a few veterans. And so we gave away almost 500 backpacks filled with school supplies. So we focus on just keeping the legacy of the Buffalo Soldiers alive, especially the 9th and 10th Cavalry. Those soldiers did a lot for the military, a lot. They're involved with the history of the military.
Great. Thank you so much. Such a broad outreach perspective that you have. Thank you so much for that. Stephanie, I know you talked a bit about your organization. Can you tell us a little more about the impact it's having in the community, and what are some of those HBCUs that you're affiliated with? I'm representing Howard University, HU. So especially happy to be doing this project for WHUT.
The 369th Experience is a 501c3 organization, and we do have an educational component that we have a K-12 study guide that meets the Department of Education standards for certain core subjects. We have a college resource guide that was done by Dr. David Terry Taft from Morgan, another HBCU. We have 21 HBCUs represented from Florida A&M, of course, Howard University, Morgan, we have Delaware State, Prairie View. We have 21, but you can find all of these specifics schools on our website. But one of the key things that our organization does is we try to teach these young at risk, if you will, African American and Puerto Rican males how important they are in the history and how important their ancestors are in the history of the United States and the military. They learn the repertoire and the history and the sacrifice that the Harlem Hellfighters made in World War I. And last year, we were the artists in residence at the Kennedy Center. We had 5 master classes by people like Jason Moran, Christian McBride, Bobby Sanabria, Mercedes Ellington. We opened for the young man, John Baptiste's Something in the Water Festival, and Pharrell Williams. I'm very happy to know that they do understand the music. They do understand that the music that they play now, there is not one genre of music that they play today that can't be related back to James Reshorp and the Harlem Hellfighters and that syncopation. So our young men learn that positive history about African American soldiers, and they get a chance to, some of these students had never flown before. Some of them had never left their hometowns before. So they get transportation, lodging, meals and incidentals, and per diem, according to the State Department. And we give them a stipend when we can, but we're all excited about the things that we're doing. And again, we're heading for the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade in 2024.
The National Association for Black Veterans, acronym is NABVETS. It was founded in 1969, and it originated with 7 returning Vietnam veterans that recognized the unfair practices and injustices that was being done to the minority veterans. I got the accreditation through VA, and I'm a veteran service officer. So I act as a liaison between VA and the veteran and assisting the veteran to get what they rightfully deserve, their benefits, whether it's health, education, housing, homelessness. Our primary mission is to help them to get their disability compensation for injuries that they incurred while I was in the military. And a lot of people think that, they just want the money. It's not about the money, it's about wealth building, because I'll give you an example. A veteran came to us, he was homeless and living in a shelter with his kids. And so he didn't even have an address. We had to let him use our office address. And so to get the correspondence from VA. Well, after we filed his claim and everything, he got 100%. He was able to take his kids out the shelter, buy a house, have transportation to take them, take them around and stuff. So it's about wealth building, because the dependents get they get benefits as well, where they can go to school and stuff. So you can set it up for your children, your children's children. And so so the job I basically do is, like I said, to work with the veteran to get them their benefits.
So important. There's so many who don't know what they're entitled to. We have so many things in common at this table. Some are obvious just by looking at who's at the table. And so what I want to do now is just look at a few pieces of military service as they relate to women in particular in the military. Let's talk about military combat. What, if any, views do you have on women serving in combat roles?
Military history isn't taught. Just some very basic. So this is military history, with the 6888, but it puts it in a broader context, because that was the front runner of a lot of things. Women joined the military, desegregating the armed forces and the civilian workplace. Truman's Order in 1948. There was one, Women's Service Integration Act in June, in July. He also desegregated the armed forces and the federal workforce. But all that came about because of World War II.
Right, that's right.
Because in 1925, the Army War College did a study and basically said, the Negro soldier is not fit.
That's right.
And it's horrible to read now.
Since you are still serving, do you have any thoughts on that?
I think it's something that we have to keep in mind, that if we are all wearing the uniform, we all should have equal access to the work that we're asked to do. Just because a person is a female does not mean that she's lesser than or can be in a diminished capacity in comparison to her counterparts. And so if they can meet the requirements to be in that career field, they can meet all of the physical agility tests and pass all the physical agility tests and meet all the standards, then by all means, they should have that opportunity to serve in combat.
The guys didn't like it because they felt obligated if they became a prisoner of war, and they felt like they would have to protect them, keep them from being raped and stuff like that. But then again, there was a lot of squeamish guys out there that ran away and didn't last too. Even when they start the military, don't ask, don't tell, and then a lot of them conscientious objectors when the war kicked out and kicked off and everything. So I believe the females should have the same right. And respect and admiration.
And I've actually been in a training environment where we've had just that. A male and a female went into a simulated burning building. The male could not make it out. The female carried the male out on her shoulder, took him out, and then went back in and got the mannequin. So it's all about, can the person meet the requirements? If they can meet the requirements and it's something they want to do, then absolutely.
Given certain situations, we really don't know how we will respond and how we will act. So women are resilient, and they will do what they have to do to get through the situation and to survive. So that means even in conflict. We don't have the traditional battlefield where you're going to go up and be in the foxhole and shoot. That battlefield, when you have the IEDs, it's behind now, and it reaches the combat service support, the service support soldiers who are populated with women. And a lot of women deploy frequently like the men do, and they are in those combat environments. They're in the rear, but they're the quartermaster people who are delivering the supplies and the ammo. So they're in the rear, but they're not. They're on that battlefield, and they're subject to being ambushed. They're subject to hitting an IED and the vehicle, exploding. So I think the narrative has changed because the battlefield has changed. And so a woman can go and say, no, I'm not going to be combat arms. I'm not going to be infantry. Let me just go be quartermaster. Let me just support the effort, and then find herself in an environment where there's conflict. And so if a woman will stand up and say, yes, I want to go to combat, you best believe she's ready, because she has not taken that lightly.
Even though, their job doesn't require them to be in the foxhole, when them bullets start flying, it doesn't have name on it, doesn't have gender on it, and it doesn't have branch of service.
One instance, a bunch of females, bullets start flying, you better believe none of us ran. Okay, we didn't turn tail. We did what we had to do. We did our jobs. We stood up and shot back when necessary. Being a medical service corps officer, people don't expect us to do that, but we are trained to do that.
Absolutely.
Because we are soldiers first.
Yes.
Period. And we are going to do what we need to do in order to first take care of ourselves and our buddies next to us.
Absolutely.
So when you're trained, when you're a soldier, you're a soldier. It doesn't matter if you're wearing lieutenant colonel rank, which I was, or the E4 standing next to me. We are soldiers, and we're going to look out for each other. That's what we do. You made a great point about the combat service support efforts not being immune to the war effort. Some people draw this imaginary line around where they feel combat service support is going to be. That line does not exist in today's war zone.
So shifting gears a bit, another area of service-related issues that is getting more attention these days, but not enough, and that is of harassment and assault of women in the military. And I recognize that women are at a higher risk. I know it happens to both men and women, but the risk seems to be higher for women, and that can lead to a hostile work environment. It could lead to psychological issues, PTSD diagnosis.
One day I was really feeling kind of down because I was new in the job. My commander had told me that this young lady was coming to get some paperwork signed. And I'm like, okay, she better hurry up and get it. It's 10 minutes to 4. I leave at 4 o'clock. And so the lady came in, and I explained everything to her, and then I gave her the paper, and she started signing. Then she started talking. And for the next hour and a half, she was just unleashing. And I'm sitting up here saying to myself, shut up, don't open your mouth, don't say nothing, because I like to talk. Listen, because she is telling the story. And so after I listened to her, I told her, I said, I'm sorry. I said, I was fortunate enough that I was not assaulted in the military. I says, but, I do understand that there are people that were. I said, what I can tell you is to sit down before you go see your psychiatrist, sit down and organize your thoughts. She says, I'm all over the map. I said, a little bit. I said, but you have a lot you want to say and you have a lot of points you want to make. So if you write them down, organize them so that when you do tell your story, it'll flow. And so after I went home and I sat in my recliner, I said, Lord, I thank you, because I was this close to saying, I can't do this job. I said, but you sent that woman to me, and that let me know this is why I'm here, because I deal with a lot of women that that are victims of sexual assault. And this same person that I was talking about, that was her second enlistment in the military. Her first enlistment, she had gotten raped when she was in Korea. Left out the military, was gone for 8 years, and decided to go back in because she really wanted to serve her country, and decided to go back in. And guess what? She had to deal with these senior NCOs, that was tormenting the junior soldiers and stuff. And it's just a shame.
It is. And the woman is labeled. The victim is labeled.
Yeah.
And she's the one that is moved, not him.
What did you do?
Often, she is the one.
What did you do to encourage him?
Yes.
You the one walk around here with your dress too short and this, that, and the other.
And that happens today, because I know some recently that was assaulted a few years ago, and she was moved, not the perpetrator. But she was, so that happens so frequently.
One of the first things I do coming in is I set the tone, zero tolerance. I also make sure that anybody that has been a victim of something like that, to let them know that I am an advocate for them and they can come and talk to me and we will help them get resolved. And oftentimes, yes, the victim is moved. Sometimes it's a humanitarian reassignment just because they feel uncomfortable where they are. And even though it may not be a reality that anyone knows about the circumstance.
Oh, they know.
Right. Or at least there's that victim may feel the perception is there and something's happened and they don't like that. And so a lot of times they will request to be reassigned somewhere else, and we try and work with them on that. But whatever the case may be, I like to say that, coming in from the very beginning, and it's not always across the board. Sometimes people are complicit in the process as well. But when you are upfront and saying what you expect and that there will not be any tolerance for anything like that, you have to follow up with your words and make sure that if anything does happen, you're following suit with that. And I think the military is trying to take a tougher stance on it, but unfortunately we have people who still are not of the ilk that they should be, will still continue to undercut and undermine the authority and the leadership to do the things to advance their own personal objectives. But it's up to all of us to speak up and to stand up for those people.
How was it when you were in service? Did you feel like you got good access to health care? And then compare and contrast that to veterans' health care.
I didn't have any issues gaining, with access to care because everybody was given access to care. It was easy. I just walked into the hospital and said I needed this or I made the appointment. Things went really smooth. All of my women's health care needs were met because I was told to. It was a part of the readiness line. So there was a standard for me to be ready to go to war. When I retired just 2 years ago, seeking that same type of care, they're like, what? No, oh, wait, you got to wait till it's time for you to sign up. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, you didn't do that within 120 days? Oh, well, I'm sorry. You got to wait until that phase is open again. You got to wait for this. You got to wait for that. It has not been easy to obtain the care that I had become accustomed to. Because I was in the Army 37 years, it wasn't apparent to me how to sign up for all these things. Yes, they give you all these pamphlets, they throw all this information at you, but no one talks you through it. There is not okay, here's the 1, 2, 3s of it all. No one does that. So you're kind of out there on your own, hoping that you've captured everything. Talking to other retirees did help, but even they were at a loss to obtain some of the health care that they need, especially women's health care. It has not been an easy thing to receive the care that I had been accustomed to receiving.
I was in a car accident while I was in the military, went one-on-one with an 18-wheeler, and I was shook up. I went to the doctor and I told him, I said, look, I need to see somebody. I said, I can't sleep. I need to get my head together about this because, you know, it was frightening. But he sent me to a psychiatrist, and she was just as messed up as me. I told her, I think we need to change places, you know. But
I hear that a lot.
But being in the military, you have to be careful. I mean, a lot of times people get sick and have illnesses and they don't report it because they don't want it used against them. The 3 elements to a claim: one, you have to have a current diagnosis, which means you're currently being treated by somebody. Another, it had to have occurred in the military. It had to be service connected. And then the third is the doctor has to link it. Well, one, they didn't go to the hospital because, you know, you out there, you know, boots on the ground fighting the war. They don't need you in the hospital. They need you out there fighting the war, you know, and stuff. And so, and then the doctors are like, well, I wasn't there way back when this happened to you, so I can't in good conscience say it's service connected. You know, it used to be anybody with a veteran can go and be service. Now, because they're overwhelmed and stretched too far with the different conflicts, now they got it. If you 10% service connected, then you're eligible for health care. You know, if you're not 10%, you either have to be in a hardship situation, which means you're making under the poverty level, or, you know, or they would tell you that, you know, you make too much money, you need to get your own health insurance.
What about family during your service days? I'm not sure who here has children and or spouses or even extended family members who were living with you when you were deployed. What was that like, balancing family life as a member of the U.S. military?
I realized that not everybody had the family support system that I had, because I had soldiers who were trying to put other soldiers on their family care plan. Well, they couldn't do that because they were subject to deploying as well. You're subject to having to make those harsh decisions, you know, when it concerns your family. We didn't deploy when I was in, we didn't deploy like they are deploying today. But women, even men with family and children, could find themselves on back-to-back deployments. And that disrupts the integrity of the family, the continuity, the unit. It does something because there's no consistency. And sometimes one parent comes back when the other one leaves. And so the rules are different. The children end up suffering because they've got to change their psyche to adapt to the rules of this person or the rules of that person.
Unfortunately, I didn't have overseas deployments. My career field has stateside deployments, and I've had them become very short stints that I've had to do, but it has taken me away. So I've missed birthdays, I've missed significant events, graduations, things like that for my kids, and it's hard for them. And particularly my youngest daughter, she'll be 28 this coming Thursday. It's always the first of the fiscal year, so they start spending the money, and it's always someplace I had to go for some course or something they needed me to do, and I would miss her birthday. So I made it a point. I think, in fact, she was in high school. I think it was her 15th birthday. I was at a conference in Atlanta. There were 2 of us that were supposed to be the hostess for it, but they decided, you know what, we don't really need both of y'all. If one of you want to cut off, I'm like, I'll go. I can get a flight out in the next hour and be back home. And I came in and surprised her for her birthday, and she was just amazed because she's in her room thinking, oh, you know, I'm just going to be here by myself. So when I came in, we had the biggest hug fest ever. But it's things like that matters, and it keeps it in my mindset that when I can free up my airmen to go back home and be with their families, to let that happen as much as possible, because you never know when something's going to come where they can't. And so it's so important to have those moments with your family.
I've had to listen to my daughter playing her viola while I was on the phone. While I was on a phone. So, and of course, you know, I couldn't hear that well because it was in an auditorium. But if you are a parent and you're in the military, you have to do those non-traditional things to connect with your family. You have to go above and beyond and do those things that helps them to know that they're important.
Very tough, because your family, they'd already heard all the crazy going on in Afghanistan, and bases being overrun and things like that. And the one that I was on was one. Them having those horror stories in their head, from the news, and then me not being able to come home, and then not being able to communicate either during that time frame was extremely difficult. But the one thing I was thankful for was that somehow or another, my husband would get that Skype to work for maybe 2 minutes.
Oh, wow.
And we would say everything we could possibly say before it was gone. And I was so thankful for that because it kept the connection between he and I, and he kept the connection between him and my family, my siblings. Because they wouldn't hear from me, of course, because I didn't have any, consistent connection with them. But he would let them know, she's okay. She's okay, I talked to her. She said this. Sometimes I had just enough time to say, thank you for the care package, but he could tell them that because they were sending me all these nice things. Well, nice things were body wipes, soap.
Oh, you'd be surprised the stuff that you do.
Nice is relative.
Those things, because those were the things that were important, at that time. They understood that, so I was always getting those care packages. But for my husband to do that, we're away from each other for Christmas, but he did everything he could to ensure we were connected some way or another, just for those couple of minutes. And it made a world of difference. And me staying, on the ground there in Afghanistan during Christmas allowed my single mom soldier to go home and be with her son, who was only 5, and did not understand why his mommy wasn't there in the first place. So when she came back and told me the story about how wonderful it was for him to see her, because he wasn't expecting her at Christmas. And just the way her face lit up, telling me about the experience. It made it so worthwhile.
That is a natural segue into a question I was going to ask you guys later. What does home mean to you all, and home for the holidays? You just shared a beautiful story about what that meant for you. But I know that when people serve, their family is serving. It's not just the person in uniform. It's the entire family, whatever that family consists of. So tell me about if others have stories about whether you were away from home or you made it home just in time, or was some significant event where home for the holidays sticks out to you.
Well, for me, I went in the military. I was 26 when I went in. And I went in on the 16th of December, 1980. Oh. And everybody was like, you going in the military for the holidays? And I'm like, ain't no big deal, I'm old enough to be away from home. On Christmas Day, I was in San Antonio. It was 90 degrees. And they gave us 2 hour, what they call Liberty Leave, so we could call home. And the lines were so long. And then when you get in that phone booth to call, the circuit lines are busy. And then you can't stand there and wait until they come, unbusy. So you got to get out the line and get back in the line and hope that you have a chance to get back up there again, just for the circuit line to be busy. I cried like a baby. Because, I'm close to my family. Now, the rest of my years, I think I've only went home for Christmas one time. And it was pretty much the day after Christmas. So I've always stayed away because I was single, didn't have any children, and I always gave up this opportunity for some of the airmen to be able to go home. Because during the holidays, as you all know, the holidays, they have the highest suicide rate for the military. People blow their brains out and do all kinds of stuff because they're away from home, can't get to their family, and it's hard for them to adjust to that. And so I would just go ahead and say, I'd rather for you to go home, be with your family, and as a NCO, always with a group of other NCOs, we used to go get the people out the dorms, and either cook, and invite them to the holiday meals and stuff. We would go over to the dining facility and eat with them.
So you made home wherever you were.
Yes.
That's beautiful.
And that's what you have to do.
Yeah.
You had to make home. So home for me is always about family. But I'll adopt somebody else and they're my extended family, and that's what you do in the military. And we used to do similar things, particularly when we were overseas. We couldn't just drive home, you couldn't just hop on a plane. So family is extended family. So whoever we met and we became close to, that was a family. And as you mentioned, you would invite the people from the dorms. We called them barracks, because the Army called them barracks. And so that's what we did. Whoever didn't have some place to go, you know, come on over. The mess halls were very good in the meals.
Trying to accommodate, yes.
However, there was still something about a home-cooked meal and about the camaraderie of eating and just sitting around and talking and then going back to eat again. And so that's what you did in order to make it through the holidays, because you didn't want someone to be alone. And during the times when you're overseas, you stay away from your family longer than normal. And so you don't want to leave anybody out.
From when I was a child, we were stationed in Japan, and I'll never forget, you know, our house became the central residence for anyone who was there. And a lot of the things that they would bring was this, you know, potluck, you know, whatever it is, we'd cook all the meats and everything else, but you bring all the sides. And to this day, we have certain sides that we still cook because of what we've learned from inviting people of different cultures.
Yes.
And that becomes the family, and that's home, because, you know, we were there for 3 years. You're not going to get on a plane and fly back. It's not as easy to get 16 hours back and jet lag and everything else. Exactly. So yeah, absolutely.
What about your transition from active duty to civilian life?
When I came out the military, I was highly polished, because they taught you leadership, they taught you supervisory skills. I mean, they taught me everything that I needed. And then I go into, first I worked for a contractor, and then I went into the government. And I just could not believe, you know, the way that people interact with each other. And I'm looking at them and I'm like, you talk to people like that? You do that kind of stuff, you know? So it was kind of hard for me to be a disciplined person and sitting here and watching, you know, somebody disrespect somebody else, you know? And so I say, you know, because I've always said, I may not like you as a person, but I do have to respect your rank or your position that you're holding. Coming out the military, you don't have all of the resources. It's not like somebody sets you down and tell you.
What got me employed was someone else who was in the military who had gotten out, retired. We met overseas, and so she was a contractor, and she told me about a contracting position. So a lot of times this is who you know, and it's still who you know. The military, as well as it is and as good as it is, sometimes you have to have a strong constitution in order to keep changing that normal. And we're going through that now with the results of COVID, where we're having to change and adapt to a new normal. In the military, we've always done that. Whether it was PCS into a new job, whether it was getting a different supervisor, we've always had to transition, and you had to do it quickly. So transitioning from the military to civilian work is just another thing we got to do. Because we're so used to having to change and having to adapt and having to be resilient and do it quickly.
And I remember gathering with a few Marines, and we were telling stories about how Thanksgiving goes on in their home. And with some who are from rural areas, we talked about, you know, how large a spread, and families came from all over. And some talked about, well, we were a small family, it was just a few of us. And we sat around and reminisced about what Thanksgiving would be like to be back home again. It was hard, but at the end of the day, the blessing was that we got a chance to go home. We got a chance to gather with our family.
On Veterans Day, we held our annual Home for the Holidays recognition, resource, and concert. Listen to these honorees share their experience.
In serving 2 tours in Vietnam, the entire year of 1969, I had the occasion to come home 2 different occasions. He and his mother met me in Hawaii for our rest and recuperation time. Secondly, in August, I believe it was the 16th of August, of 1969, Hurricane Camille hit 2 miles from my home where my son and my wife were staying in Gulfport, Mississippi at my family home. So I had to come home for the holidays, and I had to come home for other business matters. The second tour to Vietnam was in 1973, and I was there for ceasefire. And a gentleman, I think, spoke about encountering some issues when he returned home. Well, at ceasefire, I had to get out of the country within 30 days to have my unit out because we worked for intelligence, and we had 30 days to retrograde everything. But upon arrival in Seattle, where I'll be next week seeing my first great-grandchild, I was spat upon there in uniform. Having fought for your country, having fought for my country. But coming home for the holidays was just exhilarating to be able to see your family in spite of rockets and bombs, by the grace of God that missed you. So I'm calling upon you to share not just with your family, but take the family outside the door. Don't wait for them to beg you to help. You know they need. You know they need. For one should never beg for that which they have the power to earn. Let's give them the power to earn your respect. All of us about one step away from some major calamity. I thank you, I honor you, and I respect you. Thank you so very much.
The holidays are very, very special to me. I deployed to combat on a couple of holidays and very sad times, but those are the reasons why we are soldiers. We have been called to do those things. And I've seen children in third world countries on these holidays, and I tried to just bring a little cheer to their life until I could get home to my children. You know, and what are you thankful for? I'm thankful that we live in America. And you heard the flag. Where you at, flag? You know, it may be tattered. It may, you know, have went through some things, but we are in America. We can still join together, lift up the name of Christ, and celebrate our community. And that's an amen.
But before I get to that, there were times also that really made me become conditioned as I am when I was away from home. As a veteran, Vietnam era, that was difficult. There were times that I didn't think I was going to make it back this way. Because some people don't understand that when the ammunition comes in, when artillery comes in into your unit or whatever, it doesn't have a name on it. It doesn't care what color you are, or anything. You just know you have to fight to get back home. So the families that we left back at home, they had to understand that sometimes the trials and tribulations were there, but it was hard to explain when we got home. One of the worst fights I had was when I got back off the Trailway bus down in Washington, D.C. You know, we had everything down there protesting, but they were calling us baby killers. I mean, I fought from H Street all the way back home to Benning Road to get back up that road because it was difficult at that time. They called us baby killers. But it made us become more mature and understand what society is all about. I never thought I would see the same artillery and guns that I saw in Vietnam that I would see in the street today. So we have a lot of work to do in order to educate the kids what not to do and what to do.
Chances are that most of these people, these guys were. I thank the Lord that, I didn't, but that was my call. I would have just made my call. I went in the Navy.
there are several occasions where I missed holidays throughout my career. As a young Lance Corporal that just joined the Marine Corps, my unit was called You Suckers Miss Christmas because we would go out on unit deployments, which were about 6 months long, and it was always during the holiday season when we would be overseas. The unit did try to make it comfortable for us during the holidays. If it was gone during Thanksgiving, they would try to have a dinner, a symbolic dinner for us. Likewise, Christmas, try to have something for us during the Christmas season. I deployed to Operation Iraqi Freedom 1 and 2, and during those 2 deployments, again, gone for the holidays. And in those situations, you don't know what's going to happen to you. You don't know, are you going to come back the same way you were? So when we try to put care packages together, we try to put packages together for family members, it really hits home because we truly understand what that family is going through. So we try to do a wraparound. Yes, I was involved with it. I felt it. Now I'm home. So now it's my turn to try to give as much comfort to the families that are going through it currently. And this helps with the motivation of these younger soldiers and Marines and sailors and airmen to be able to cope because they know they have a support system. Always keep that in mind during the holiday season. Holiday seasons are tough, especially even for folks who aren't in the service because of the fact you may have lost a family member. So you always think back about that family member that is no longer with you. But the good thing is we have support.
Our friends at the Maryland Veterans Museum in Southern Maryland held a gathering of veterans who shared their home for the holiday stories.
In 1977, I graduated from Army Basic Training and went on to Advanced Individual Training. After that training, I was ordered to attend a training course to work on the Army's Field Artillery Digital Automatic Computer, in 1977. Being a service member, I obeyed orders. But all of these events pushed the year into early December. After I left my training, I got orders to go to Germany. I was very familiar with Germany, having been born there and living there for about 8 years as a dependent of my father, an Army NCO. I was given a few weeks' leave advanced to me to visit my family. So I took a 2-day bus ride home from Oklahoma to do just that. I was scheduled to leave the country on December 21st. A few days into my leave, my father suffered a heart attack. He was revived by my brother and myself, and after a short hospital stay, came home the day before I had to fly out. I remember he and my mother on the frozen tarmac of the small commuter airport in West Virginia as I flew out on basically a little biplane, very, very small plane. It was the last time I ever saw him. A month after I left, he passed away from another heart attack. As I arrived in Germany, I was all alone. My unit comrades were either on leave or otherwise engaged with their local girlfriends or friends or other people. They had lives there, and it was Christmas time. The unit had a skeleton crew manning the various departments. My platoon sergeant got me down in supply office and found me a room at the barracks and left me to myself. Christmas was only a day away as I got settled in with my roomie. On Christmas Eve, one of the squad sergeants came to see me and told me he wanted me to come to his family's home for Christmas Day. Now, me being a lowly private, I could hardly refuse a staff sergeant, could I? So the next morning, he came and picked me up. I was shocked when I arrived. First of all, I knew no one, but everyone talked to me and introduced themselves to me. All the platoon sergeants' wives had cooked up a wonderful turkey and ham dinner. There were kids everywhere, all of them just filled with energy, a lot of laughter, and real merrymaking. Christmas music was playing, there were adult beverages. It might have been the best Christmas party I'd ever been to, even to this day. I stayed till the evening, and as things were winding down, the same sergeant offered me a ride back to the barracks. It was a wonderful day, and I knew I could go to sleep that night because they had filled up my day. I was far from home, no family, no home, no friends. These NCOs made sure that I was welcomed. It was my first glimpse of what service members do for each other. All of you know who have been in the service that your comrades will do things for you. They see you, they know what they're doing. They didn't have to do anything. I wouldn't have thought less of them, wouldn't have thought anything at all of it. All across the world this season, find a way to make a service member's holiday the best it can be. Many of them will be on duty. Call them, email, if it's possible, do a video. Don't talk about missing them, though you do. Talk about the family, their friends, their community. Make them feel like they are at home, even if it's just for a few moments.
Everybody here's been a veteran, has been deployed over Christmas. Everybody knows how hard it is to be away from family. Especially, I've done 3 deployments over Christmas, and so it's always rough. But of all the ones I did, the first one was most memorable for me. And the reason why is my brother had joined the Marine Corps about 3 years before I did. And I was in Iraq in 2004 in December of that Christmas that year. And my brother was with 2nd Recon Battalion, and he was over at Camp Fallujah. And I got put over in Al-Assad when I first joined the Marine Corps. I was an aviation mechanic. And so, if any of y'all know your history, the Battle of Fallujah, the Second Battle of Fallujah happened in late December. In fact, I believe the last day was the 23rd or 24th. I had talked to him several times. Back then we didn't have really good communication like they do now, but I talked to him several times, and my sergeant allowed me to use his email to talk back and forth with him. And before the Second Battle of Fallujah kicked off, I talked to him and asked him if he could come to Al-Assad for Christmas, because I hadn't seen him in a couple years and barely talked to him. And when the Battle of Fallujah started, we didn't think it was going to happen, and I was terrified the entire time because he was in a rough spot. But Christmas Eve, I got a phone call from the flight line, and his gunny had let him go, and they had just got done, and he jumped on a bird, and he came down to Al-Assad, and he's able to spend Christmas with me. And we were able to get him a shower and get him a place to stay. And it's the first time I spent Christmas with him in probably 5 or 6 years, and it's the first time I'd seen him in a couple of years. So even during the bad times, it's always something good. Thank you.
I remember distinctly my first deployment to Desert Storm. And it was the first time that I was away from, my family for the holidays. I was thinking that we would be able to go back home for something like that, but it was a no-go. We had to stay there. And what the command did was, made the entire week, of the holiday week, during Christmas, very festive. The meals, they prepare special meals for us. We had stuff like chicken and steak and all of that great stuff. And then the command team, served us, and, we were able to have a good time. I remember we got to sing and dance and have a great time. And it was one of those things where, you got homesick, but you had your fellow battle buddies there to support you. And it was really cool to see the other side of your leadership, because they were also away from their family. And for them to create a home away from home was huge. And so my first deployment and being away from home during that time frame was a hard and special time.
I spent 22 years and did not have a remote assignment. I did have to go TDY for 6 weeks, one time over to Europe, and that was the only time we were ever separated. during that short period of time, our mail was, we used cassette tapes, whatever, to talk back and forth and so forth. And so that was our communication. And but she was always number one in my life, has always been. And I kind of pride myself a little bit on kisses. And in fact, I was kind of interested in another lady a little while, but anyhow, I said, you know, these lips have never touched another lips of another woman for over 62 years. I'm here today because my wife, she had a stroke September of 20. And we prayed and prayed for healing. I wound up bringing her home. She was right side, whatever. She couldn't talk, but I wound up being her care person at the home for 10 months. And after that, she wound up developing pneumonia, and God healed her permanently, brought her back home, okay? Every year, September the 5th, November the 13th. November 13th, today, was her birthday. Today, she would have celebrated her 84th birthday. And so her favorite breakfast place was Cracker Barrel. And so I usually come every Cracker Barrel for the 13th and have breakfast. And that's how I got here. And this man came up to my table, saw a picture of my wife and so forth, and wanted to know the story.
We hope you enjoyed this Veterans in Transition Home for the Holidays special. I want to take the opportunity to thank those who make this program possible throughout the year. Give thanks to those who have and those who continue to serve. And remember, stay relevant and on purpose. Until next time.
Christmas all year, I wish it was. Christmas all year. Christmas all year, I wish it was. Christmas all year. Christmas all year, I wish it was. Christmas all year. Christmas all year, I wish it was. Christmas all year. Christmas all year, I wish it was. Christmas all year.